Welcome, everyone, to the Ourtwocents Podcast. My name is Admir, and I'm joined today.
Is that it?
I'm joined today by Fahad and Osama. Hello, boys, sirs, gents.
Yo. Thanks for having us once more.
I appreciate you being here. We could have been anywhere, really everywhere, with anything and everything. Maybe all at once. But you chose to be here.
Different.
This guy's
diffy, man.
You just
this
chose.
guy's different, man.
You just do it. You
chose to be here with me and our lovely viewers and our lovely listeners. That's right, folks. Today we're reviewing Everything Everywhere All at Once, the new A24 film starring a couple of people that we'll get to. But before we get to speaking about the movie, we have some housekeeping items to chat about. Firstly, you're probably listening to us, if you are, on a Spotify or on a iTunes Music. There it is again.
Apple Podcast.
You serious?
Yo, I need an end of year cut. TikTok of all, another place they can find us, by the way. TikTok of all of the Admir attempts at trying to figure out what the Apple provision is for this podcast.
And do a remix with him reading the plot.
Just
have
dudes can't.
Have the both of them.
Third grade reading level. Yeah.
Dementia season, man.
We're the what? Dementia season.
Dementia season, cutting in early.
Crazy. Very possible. Who knows? Hopefully not. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. So yeah, we're on Apple Music. Apple's podcast.
Dog, you're done. You're done here. You're done here.
Yeah, I'm going. All right, no, I quit the podcast. I quit the. This is my moonfall moment right here.
Please, you quit the Spotify? Is that what it is? No, please. Yeah, we're on those websites and on like Stitcher as well, so you can find us podcast-wise on there. We're also on the fill in the blank
Tube.
Yes.
I didn't know. I cut him some slack. That is a visual medium where you can find us. You can subscribe. You can like our videos. You can comment any reactions to any of our videos. I don't know why these two are laughing right now.
How many ways are we gonna have this intro?
Describe YouTube. Tell me it's YouTube without telling me it's YouTube every week. Every week. That's where you can obviously check out our long-form episodes, just like this one with our beautiful faces and Chris's beautiful edits, as well as the short-form segments throughout this podcast, which you can check out if you don't have enough time to watch the long one, or if you just want to see the smaller edits as well. Where else, Admir, can you check us out?
I mean, you can check me out wherever you want, but to check us
out...
please,
isn't Kasha
please.
behind you? Nah, you're done here, dog. You're straight up done here. It's over, bro. I'm about to rat on you right now.
This is how I get her to listen.
Hey,
wow!
Come correct.
Yo! Suspect.
And they can find us on the Twitter, where they can interact with us, of course, at the Ourtwocents Pod. That's the handle. The cast was taken, so it's just pod. But the TikTok has the entire name, Ourtwocents Podcast. And every once in a while, a banger shows up. We've had 3 kind of bangers on there, so please go. It's a good time. We roast
Keith Brosnan vibes.
Keith Brosnan. Please go look at the TikTok, because it's a very...
If you don't know who Keith Brosnan is, you should check out our TikTok. You might get clued in on who that is.
He's a funny dude.
Yeah. Hilarious guy.
Funny guy.
The other thing is, we also have a year-long draft going. I don't know why I got the giggles right now. A year-long draft going on where dudes drafted things, and now those
dudes,
have to be accounted for. So one of
this
those...
podcast is done. Start over.
We're actually washed.
Welcome everyone to the Ourtwocents. So one of the things that was drafted was Everything Everywhere All at Once by Fahad, and the score for the film was quite low, Fahad, particularly because of what?
Because of the box office numbers. It had like a weird release, so the box office numbers really nuked it. And I did draft this movie, and that's also one of the reasons why I'm wearing shades today, because I have bloodshot eyes.
It's hungover.
From crying at how this movie
Happy
did so
to.
well. And I was chatting shit on the chat about how this movie was going to save me.
Yeah.
I'm behind Sam by...
I mean, we did say before we did this draft that whoever finds that golden nugget, that Parasite movie, is going to win this draft most likely. I will say Fahad
This was it.
kind of got the closest possible. This, if there was going to be a Parasite movie this year, this was the one. And just a reminder for why the box office hit you, we do our calculations based off of user and critic scores across Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, as well as user scores on IMDb, and then multiply that by a multiplier of the budget over box office number, which is why Fahad ultimately got screwed in the end. So what final score did you land with, Fahad?
Should I go through the actual scores
of
the thing too?
Do it. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So Everything Everywhere All at Once got a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes, 94 on user reviews, 82 on Metacritic, 8 on Metacritic user, 9 on IMDb user. The budget was 25 mil, and thankfully you guys were kind enough to letting me include the box office tickets from like basically today instead of the first official weekend. If it was just the first official weekend, it would have been 500,000, which would have murked this whole score. But until now, from when it released, is 8.8 million, which adds up to a score of 15.56. We'll be having conversations about this scoring system before the next draft. That's what I'm about to say. So
there you go. And we also had another movie release this past weekend that was drafted. We're not going to review it, unfortunately, because there's only so much time. Osama, what film are we referring to here?
That was the Jake Gyllenhaal special Ambulance, which got a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of a 6.8, user score of an 8.8, Metacritic critic score of 5.4, user 6.7, IMDb 6.5. It had a budget of 40 mil and raked in box office worldwide numbers of 31.9, giving me a final score of more than Fahad's 27.27.
That's
so
bonkers.
Unlucky there, my friend.
I don't like. This exposes a fatal flaw in the scoring system, bro.
How the bagel crumbles, man.
That's oh, I see. Everything bagel.
It's they're pretty good with chives.
Are they though?
I like them.
Listen, can we talk about everything bagels?
I'm an everything bagel guy. I'm
not. I feel like you taste nothing at that point. Everything on it, you just taste texture.
It's only like 4
You don't
things.
taste any of the individuals.
Not that much.
But it's like some cheese. It's some poppy johns.
It's poppy seeds. It's got like some onion thing.
Onions.
Yeah.
It's got like regular bagel dough.
And then
Now
it
you're
has one
done.
more
You're
thing
done.
on it.
Bro, plain is not one of the flavors they added to the everything bagel.
Of course it is. It has to be. How else could it be an everything?
Dude, everything bagel is only second worst to a raisin bagel.
Now you bugged out.
A cinnamon raisin bagel.
Harsh again.
Yeah,
very harsh.
you are
You've ever had a toasted raisin bagel?
I have. I can eat it, but I don't like a sweet bagel. I'm sorry.
I don't know about that. I think you could do something.
Yeah.
You could do something with the sweet bagel.
Yeah. Add some. Yeah.
So that favorite bagel then? What's the favorite bagel? Let's not end on a
sesame.
sour
You
note.
gotta go sesame.
With what?
Just plain sesame. Oh, with flavored cream cheese. So I'm going jalapeno cheddar cream cheese and a low-fat tomato basil cream cheese.
Okay. Fahad?
I'm going some lox and an everything bagel.
Good choice.
I will agree with you. I will just go the plain bagel route with the lox, of course. So I want to have the salmon.
Classic.
That's with the chives, the cream cheese.
Oh, that's elite. That's elite. Yeah. That's a classic too, because the sesame just be crumbling like the Nature Valley bars. So
yeah,
it's just
it's very bagel-y, the sesame bagel.
Yeah,
it's got a lot of bagel in it.
Our two bagels podcast.
Our logo could be.
I was just gonna say this week only.
Yeah. So anyway, we're all reviewing a movie here. Starring, let me get it here, okay, because I got the Wikipedia file up. Yeah, so it's a 2022 release, came out 2 weeks ago. Science fiction black comedy action film, so it's quite a mixture here. Directed by Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, I think is his name. Yep, collectively known as the Daniels. It stars Michelle Yeoh, Kei Ho Kwan, Stephanie. How do you say your last name? Is it who? Is the S silent?
Stephanie
It's
Sue?
H.S. Sue. Okay, so I
Stephanie
guess
Sue.
the H is silent. Okay. Jenny Slate, Harry Shum Jr., James Hong, and Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm going to run through the plot here, and then we're going to do our 2 cent segment where we have some topics to discuss. Now, I usually hold off on these. I don't know why. Like I'm some sort of dude who holds things off. So I'll just mention them to the viewers so you can know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the multiverse depiction here and see how it stacks up with other multiverse depictions of recent culture film-wise. So Marvel, we're going to talk about the humor in the film. We're also going to talk about the setting, the primary setting of the film taking place in an IRS building and the laundromat. What is the point of all that jazz? And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the attention / the eyes that this film deserves, and partly to discuss that box office score that was so low that Fahad mentioned. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but before we do, I'm going to run through the plot. So here we go. Evelyn Wang is a Chinese-American woman who runs a struggling laundromat with her husband, Waymond. Tensions in the household are high due to the laundromat being audited by the IRS after Evelyn incorrectly filed her taxes. Additionally, Waymond is trying to give divorce papers to Evelyn. Evelyn's father, Gong Gong, has just arrived from China, and Evelyn's daughter, Joy, has been trying to get her mother to accept her girlfriend, Becky. While at the IRS building, Waymond's personality changes when his body is briefly taken over by Alpha Waymond. Alpha Waymond explains to Evelyn that many parallel universes exist, since every choice made creates a new universe. The people of the Alpha universe, led by the late Alpha Evelyn, developed, quote, verse jumping, technology that allows people to access the skills, memories, and body of their parallel universe counterparts. The multiverse is being threatened by Jobu Tupaki, formerly Alpha Joy. Her mind was splintered after Alpha Evelyn pushed her to extensively verse jump. Jobu Tupaki now experiences all universes at once and can verse jump and manipulate matter at will. She has created a black hole-like everything bagel that can potentially destroy the multiverse. Alpha Waymond believes that Evelyn, as the greatest failure of all Evelyns of the multiverse, is being hunted by Jobu Tupaki because her untapped potential can allow her to defeat Jobu Tupaki. Evelyn is given verse-jumping technology to fight Jobu's verse-jumping minions, who begin converging in the IRS building. Evelyn learns of Waymond's plans to divorce her and discovers other lives where she made different choices and flourished, such as by becoming a kung fu master and movie star instead of leaving China with Waymond. Alpha Gong Gong instructs Evelyn to kill Joy to hinder Jobu Tupaki, but Evelyn refuses. She decides she must face Jobu Tupaki by gaining the same powers as her, so she verse jumps repeatedly while battling Jobu Tupaki's minions and Alpha Gong Gong's soldiers. Evelyn's mind splinters, and she discovers other bizarre universes where humans have hot dogs for fingers, yum, and where she works alongside a chef with a ratatouille-like raccoon. She learns that Jobu Tupaki doesn't want to destroy everything. In fact, she created the everything bagel to destroy herself, and has been searching for an Evelyn who can understand her. Jobu Tupaki feels that because there are so many vast universes and unending chaos, nothing truly matters. In other universes, the Wangs are about to lose the laundromat. In other universes, the Wangs are about to lose the laundromat due to tax errors. Alpha Waymond is killed by Jobu Tupaki, and other Waymond rejects Evelyn after decades apart. Evelyn is nearly swayed to Jobu Tupaki's cause and stabs her universe's Waymond. She's about to join Jobu Tupaki in entering the bagel, but stops when she hears Waymond's calls to be kind. Evelyn defeats Jobu Tupaki's minions by using her multiverse knowledge to find what is hurting each of them and then subsequently helping them. Evelyn reaches Jobu Tupaki and tells her she's not alone and that Evelyn is happy to have a life with her, even if it's simple and brief. Meanwhile, in parallel universes, Evelyn reconciles with Waymond and Joy. Jobu Tupaki initially rejects Evelyn, but returns to her, and the pair embrace. In an epilogue, the family's relationships have improved. Becky's part of the family, and they return to the IRS building on a second chance to file their taxes. As the auditor talks, Evelyn's attention is momentarily drawn to her alternative selves and the multiverse before she grounds herself back in the present. End film. So that is the plot of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Get into this here, boys. Osama, I'm going to go to you for this one. The multiverse nature of this movie. Not the most unique, we can say, but also quite extraordinary. How did you feel about it? 1 cent, it was wonderful, or 2 cents, or rather 1 cent, it was not good, and then 2 cents, it was great. So what did you think?
Yeah, so I went into this movie pretty early, and for this one that was pretty unique and hadn't seen that much marketing material about it, I wanted to go in completely blind. So I think the multiverse aspect to it kind of took me completely off guard, and I say that in a really, really good way. I think in the first scene that we see it is when Evelyn is, she encounters Alpha Waymond in the elevator going up the IRS building, and then she ends up deciding to go to the janitor's closet to first experience that I guess experience. And I was genuinely shocked in the theater, and I was also excited because I was wondering, the movie so far, having gone into that scene, had been sort of emotional. It's someone dealing with the stresses of life and the fact that they're in a what appears to be a dwindling relationship with a child who is starting to rebel, and with a business that's slowly just taking over her life. And I feel like it was very relatable and very realistic, and it was starting to hit me up. And then the moment where we first experienced the multiverse jumping is when I got completely taken off guard. In the beginning, I was like, how are they going to do this in a way that is not cheesy, is not weird, it's not just a vehicle to like get the story through, but in a way that's actually cohesive in the plot and actually adds to the story rather than just ending up being silly. And to be honest, I think they did a wonderful job with it. I think the mechanics of the verse jumping actually make sense. So in a movie where they didn't need to go into detail about the mechanics behind it all, they did a really good job of establishing rules, which is something where we are, as boring as we are big fans of on this podcast, establishing rules that allow you to do things within reason with this film, and they absolutely do that. And I think establishing the rules of this multiverse jumping allows us to feel the emotions throughout the film that we otherwise wouldn't have if it's like, let's say, a Marvel movie where maybe verse jumping is less of a big deal and there are less stakes because there's always going to be a positive, happy ending. But in this case, there were things at stake. There was actual benefit to the storyline of Evelyn going through these different scenarios and actually learning a lot more about herself. So overall, from a concept standpoint, from a mechanic standpoint, and then from just an artistic standpoint, I think they did such a great job in this film in a way that actually complemented the story rather than just taking it over and making the film end up cheesy. So for me, it's an absolute 2 cents. What about you, Fahad?
Yeah, I definitely, it kind of, I guess, Marvel, if there's any last second cuts that they can do to their upcoming multiverse movie, they should steal some ideas from here on how to kind of like at least make it kind of based in a movie like this that is almost like pushing the boundaries of reality, but still kind of have it based in real moments and real things that happen to people, is very like important. Because like you can get lost in the sauce on like the special effects and all the crazy things happening around you, but I love that the fact that this movie was also like still based in reality, like something that we'll talk about, like the laundromat thing, like just kind of like an average person could see themselves living out Evelyn's life. Although you have heard these like alternate realities where she's all these different people, in this version she's this regular person, which women actually like really stresses on, and almost like a matter of fact but making fun of her, but not really making fun of her the same way, like you're so average. And I definitely love that perspective of it, although there's like all these kind of different versions. And you also kind of get to lean on almost the whole movie being like a really long Rick and Morty episode because you're kind of like going through these almost obscene versions of reality that exist sometimes that we'll also talk about later, where it's really funny. The movie really hits you as really funny, but then it also knows when to take itself seriously. Like, it's not just like clowning itself for the sake of it. I definitely loved it. I think that it's a super unique idea. And Chris was kind of talking about it earlier today. Hopefully, this kind of inspires other studios and other kind of like creators to resort to original ideas and implement like cultural norms and stuff in them, because that'll actually like make it a hit. Obviously, we'll talk about the box office issues later, but this movie is like off the bat like amazing. And also I love the structure of it being in like 3 different parts. The 2 movies aren't close, but The Last Duel was also like this, where it almost tells you the same events, but it has 3 different parts from 3 different perspectives. So just kind of like, I loved it. So it was almost like deja vu watching the movie. 2 cents for me if you didn't like get it from now until now from all I've been saying. Admir, what about you? What did you think?
Oh, I got it, brother. I got it. Yeah. I agree. I agree with everything everybody's saying. I mean, it is such a, like, the mechanics of it, I thought, to pick up on what Osama said, very interesting, and we sort of get put into that world quickly. Like, it's like, bang, this is how you do it. And there is some, at times, heavy-handed exposition, which I think you need. I don't know how else you go about this. So I think once you're on board with the mechanics of it, they really don't mess around with those rules, which I think are really important for the sake of following the story, because you have the bagel thing, right, which is a little bit outside the rules. And so if that's the only thing that's sort of breaking the fabric of the story, that's okay. We can focus on that. If everything else starts getting kind of weird, and maybe people are getting powers, and maybe someone can travel easily compared to that, like, it didn't become that, which I thought was really important. They kept it as simplistic as a complex idea like this could be, which I thought was great. And then to pick up on 2 things you both said and to sort of combine them, the whole point of the multiverses in this film serves more than just the plot. I think there's a very important theme that runs through this movie, and it's very direct towards the end of it, and it has to do with, I think, what you said, Fahad, about like her being not the best version of herself across all the other universes. If you've watched Rick and Morty for longer than a season, you really understand that Rick has the same sort of problem that Jobu Tupaki has, which is, if there's infinite versions of me, or if there's like infinite X or Z or of stuff, why does what I'm doing now matter?
Yep.
Right. So I really enjoyed that bit running through the movie, and I liked the way they stuck the landing of, yes, those things are all true. Like, if we live in this reality where multi-universes are real and all that, why is the present relevant? Or why are you relevant across this universe, across these many universes, right? And it's the relationships that you build, right? And I think it's perhaps cheesy or whatever you want to call it, but I think it's relevant and it's important, and it's like a very similar theme again in Rick and Morty that you see. And I'm not spoiling anything out right here, but Rick has a hard time coming to grips with that fact. Like, he loves his Morty, but he can't say it to him, even though he does, right? Because I guess it will make him feel lesser, or whatever the case is going on with his character. But to stick with this one, that moment in the parking lot is super important, because it brings to a culmination the thematical point of the multiverse, right? And why it almost doesn't matter that there's other universes. We want this Evelyn. Like, this is the Evelyn we care about. And it's kind of funny and, in a way, interesting that the most boring Evelyn of all is the one that we grew the most attached to. And it's the one that I think I wanted to end the story on. At least I can't speak for everyone. But it's the one that I want, that's where we should have ended it. I didn't want it to go to another.
And the one that saves the world.
And it's the one that saves the world. There's another parallel theme here that runs again. It's built on the idea of the multi-universe, which is it's really key here that it is a dense idea that was simplistically delivered, but is very rich in meaning, which is difficult to accomplish. It's very, very difficult. The thing for me was the whole idea of all your failures impact who you are today. And that message was delivered in a very positive way. Like, I think a lot of the times, a lot of us would look back at what we could have done and then we didn't, or for whatever reason we weren't able to. And we look upon that as if it's something bad. Like, oh, I could have been great, but, you know, got that knee injury and so I couldn't become this and that. Right? Like, I think we all have that. And Evelyn is like encapsulating all of that energy in the beginning of the movie. Like, she's constantly thinking about, should I have left China? Should I have married Wayman? Should I have, I think she had her kid very young, I think, or something like that.
Relatively, soon after, because when they do the thing, like
right when they get to home, right? Like, should I have started this business as a laundromat that's like running razor thin profit apparently? Like, should I have done all these things? What I think a lot of people fail to do, and I think this is why this movie, art in general, but this film specifically is really good at reminding you, is like who you are now is almost the most important thing, more important than who you could have been, right? Because who you are now, it can only be from your failures and successes that lead to who you are, right? Now, does the film take I don't want to say Disney, but it does take this approach of like, well, even in your failures, you're the best version of yourself. Like, I don't want to go down that route. I think it's good that they went that route for the plot reasoning, for Evelyn to be the one to save them all. But I think there's something really significant there thematically of we all carry forward our experiences and who we are, and our past is filled with successes and failures. And I think if we like who we are today, I think we have to acknowledge the fact that our failures had just as much to do with that as our successes, right? And if we're okay with who we are today, we should be fine that we failed. And then the beauty of that is you have a chance to succeed around every corner, right? There's this whole idea of every decision in the multiverse splits off into another sort of universe, right? So it's like, hey, even if you feel like you could do something more or something less or whatever the case is, it's always around the corner for you to maybe change or improve or grow. Like, I talked a lot. All of that is in this movie, and it's delivered to you pretty straightforwardly, which I think it needed to be because there's a lot going on here. And I didn't even touch on, I think, the things that you guys touched on. But wrapping everything up, the mechanics of it, the look of it. We're going to get, I guess, onto the action a little bit later. But wrapping it all up very tightly in this bow of thematic sort of grandness, I thought was really, really stellar. Like, we're going to watch Marvel. Is Marvel going to be able to do something like that? I'm not going to put them up to that standard because this is really hitting it out the park with something I didn't expect. So, 2 cents on that one.
If I could say, you just reminded me of one thing in the movie, which is, like I'm someone who is constantly struggling with this fight for always wanting to achieve more and more and more and failing to, and I'm sure you guys are the same and many others listening are the same, where failing to take notice and take pleasure in the moments right now and even my accomplishments thus far, and always constantly looking forward and never being satisfied. And I think heading into this movie, I wasn't expecting to get emotional, but I think the scene that hit me the hardest was in the universe where
in the alley,
Evelyn is in the alley where Evelyn is the martial arts celebrity in China, and she meets Wayman there, and he's so proud of who she's become and everything like that. At the gala, they talk in the alley, and they start kissing and they start talking, and she tells him how, there's a world where I didn't get to do all of this because I went with you to America and didn't get to be me and didn't get to be this famous and this successful. And I think that scene is so beautiful because we see bits of it throughout the movie, and it kind of has no purpose up until the end, where they hit on the line of, Wayman is smoking with her, and then he turns around and says something to the effect of, despite all of this, part of me would have been very happy just being in America running a laundromat with you. And that's the part that like hits me the most, because it's like he speaks to, well, both that and the fact that he speaks to fighting the world with kindness, which is also something, a theme that was in this film. And it's something that, you know, like and I'm sure the both of you try to live my life with, which is like, I'm always going to set a certain standard for myself and be kind to everybody around me, no matter how or what kind of treatment I get in return. And that's just a reflection of who I am, and that way I live my life with no regrets. And it was very refreshing to see a character on screen speak to that, because so often in life, you know, I personally have heard from so many people around me, you know, you have to protect yourself, you have to like not be so kind and naive to everybody around you, because that's how you get hurt, that's how people take advantage of you and roll over you. And I think my response has always been, I don't care what other people do, because if I change me, then I am no longer what makes me happy, regardless of what somebody else's response is. And it was very, very refreshing to see someone on screen say, hey, well, that's my way of combating the evil out in the world. You do it through fighting, you do it like you literally fight, which is this theme throughout the movie of like always fighting. Like, how do you fight? And I love the reveal about him saying, well, I fight it by just being an example of what I want out in the world. And pretty much alluding to the fact that, you know, none of this celebrity, none of this fame matters. Like, at the end of the day, you're the person I love. And like, that moment hit me really hard in the theater. And I was like, wow, like that is a beautiful summation of this film, but also a reminder to me through all the chaos that we've been to lately to just enjoy where I'm at now, enjoy the relationships I have, because I'm constantly always assessing like can I do more? Can I do more? Can I do more? And it's more about the relationships that you build along the way. So long way of saying I'm happy to be on this podcast with you all.
Nice.
No.
Vibes.
100%. That's the scene that hit me as well. And I think there's something else I just wanted to mention about it. For a large majority of the movie, we get the sense that Evelyn thinks that Wayman is holding her back. Like she's the one always pushing and moving forward, and he's the one sort of just like plotting behind her and all that. In that universe where she's a successful martial artist and you know, performer and actress and all that, he's also very successful, which I thought was a great point to make. Like, I think so often we think, if I have just X, or if this person was out of my, I could have done this and I could have done that, and they should really love me for sticking with them and all that. You forget the fact that when two people come together in a relationship, they both have to sacrifice. Like, they both have to set things aside, right? And I love the film for doing that. I absolutely adore the film for doing that. And that scene of like, you know, I would have been happy in a universe, you know, in another life, had we just had the laundromat. And it speaks to, I think,
that's OD feels, man.
Yeah,
chills to this day.
It just speaks to, I think, a lot of the times, like, we think that we can be happier if we just, this was better, if that was better, if we just had this, or, you know, it's such a good film to remind you of your life could be different, but it wouldn't necessarily mean it would be better because of those things. And it's more of like, take stock of what you have, because in another life, you may have wished to have exactly what you have in this moment, right? That's to deliver that message.
That's so good. I want to watch this again right now. Like, it's so good.
In the middle of this movie is nuts. It's nuts to deliver it, man. And it's delivered so well. And I think something that helps carry this movie forward, and the message and the tone, is the humor of it. And you get quite a variety of humor in this film. Fahad, I'll go to you for this one, because you like jokes.
So he's a joke man himself.
He's a joke man on the weekends.
I'm a jokester.
Funny guy. He's a funny guy.
The trickster.
What did you make of the humor of this movie? Obviously, 1 or 2 cents here. What did you make?
Kind of like it kind of also like builds off of what you guys kind of mentioned, because we've had other movies that kind of try to approach like the main theme with like, oh, just be nice and things will work out, right?
Yeah.
Not shouting out Wonder Woman 1984 on how they.
Hey, yo, shout out
in one of the most
1984, man.
In one of the worst ways possible. This is a perfect example of how he kind of talks about that. and the humor comes in how in both her and Evelyn's superpowers. Like they have almost like Thanos level strength, like going and each like the special effects kind of adds to the background of the movie. Like the overall background of the movie isn't super colorful, but whenever like Evelyn or Joy are kind of like going through their moment, like where they're working through a hallway of dudes just coming at them. I mean, the scene of her using the two massive
Paraphernalia.
Paraphernalia, yeah. And paraphernalia. Yo, see, like
That's
censorship.
We can say dildos.
Wow,
Wasn't it that?
wow.
I'm sorry?
We can
I'm
say
sorry?
that, guys.
No kids
It's
are
rated
allowed.
E
No
for
kids.
everyone. Those are one.
Like
So are
it was
they.
insane, and it's like she's beating him like a police officer in that moment. And I also think like they made it a very clear kind of distinction to have two women kind of beat up on all these hallway of dudes like coming at them. Like there's some kind of dark humor in that too, because you don't see a lot of that usually in Hollywood. So I completely loved it. Loved their like kind of like superpowers and funny ways that they kind of took down people, while you have this serious kind of theme going on in the background, which perfectly like blends well together, you know. And then you also have like just the general kind of Asian American struggle jokes that are also thrown in there throughout the movie, when she kind of like tells her daughter that she's gaining weight. That's some shit. If you have like any immigrant parent, they'll say that shit to your face without like any sort of
And in an emotional moment. Too.
and an emotion, without any like she's already processing the fact that like my grandfather won't accept me for who I am truly, and you pull up on her like, yo, you getting fat, like watch your diet. Like anyone that has had immigrant parents knows that sort of shit will happen. So even while being relatable, still having kind of like these amazing like supernatural superpowers, and also having these kind of like massive themes in the background. Obviously, again, like 2 cents for me. We kind of talked about this before we started this, where how we would kind of disagree on one of these. I don't see it come in, but fantastic, like hit it out of the park. Usually I'm not about like comedy movies like that, but this movie kind of really blends all like the big themes with the smaller kind of stuff really well. What did you think, Sam?
Yeah, I mean the humor on this just stood out the most to me. I think from the beginning, when we're introduced to Alpha Waymond, I think Ke Huy Quan, he just so like. Also, I didn't realize until after the film that he was in Indiana Jones and in the Goonies, and
As a kid, yeah.
like he hasn't acted for over 20 years, and then just comes in and puts in this level of a performance. In the beginning, I thought he's gonna be an irrelevant character up until he like fully transforms in the elevator, and then he's like transforming in the IRS building and beating up cops. I thought, well, one, from an acting standpoint, he just did amazing, like in the same scenes, just transforming back and forth. But two, he was genuinely super hilarious in the entire process. And I think for me, the standout performance of the entire film, but I think he added so much to the humor and the emotion at the same time that carried like that merged and married those so well. Cause I think the worry for me, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit with the conversation around the multiverse, which is there's a fine line between hilarious and like silly, right? And they could have easily dove into silly territory so many times in this film without being funny, and they never crossed the border. It was always just pure hilarity. I think even in the scenes with obviously like the hot dog fingers, the first time you see it, you're like, okay, this is ridiculously silly, but I get it. Second time you see it, you're like, okay, nice callback. Third time, you're like, oh, this is a dope theme now in this entire thing. And they're like really like investing in their jokes, as opposed to other movies that, will throw away jokes here and there, not give it the kind of investment that it needs to flourish throughout a film. And they did that, I feel, with all of the jokes in this movie, whether it's like you said, Fahad, like Joy, who's the villain of the movie, very intimidating. She was both scary and hilarious at the same time in that hallway scene. Like, you're genuinely worried because she's murdering people with ease in this hallway, but doing it in such a hilarious way, a well-performed way. I think the acting is what elevated the comedy to the next level, where it could have started like in the theater. It was one of the funniest experiences I've had in a long time, where it felt like I wish I was with my friends watching this, like Hangover type vibes, like 21 Jump Street type of vibes. But even in those films, they really lean sometimes into silly a little bit too much. And in this film, I think it would have been silly if they didn't invest so much time into each joke, where each joke became a running theme throughout the film and actually added to the story rather than was just like a cheap joke to get everybody laughing in the theater. So for me, overall, an absolute 2 cents. It's one of the reasons why I would love to watch this movie again, and a huge props to just all of the actors in the film for being hilarious. I mean, down to like the security guard, the main security guard, who just gets messed up like so many times in this film. He's like one of those generic like Chinese action film types who like gets up, gets beat up, gets down, jumps back up again, gets beat up, goes down. Like he just got destroyed in so many ways. I mean, you talked about the dildo scenes in the hallway, but I mean, the butt plug scenes were just absolutely some of the loudest laughter in the theater between him and the other security guard, just fighting to see who can squat on the butt plug first in order to get their alpha powers and then and destroy Evelyn. I think that's like something, I don't know how you come up with it, but then to come up with it and then execute on it so well was just beyond hilarious. So I think they had such a good time with this movie. They had to have had a blast just being as creative as possible, and it shone through on the big screen. So yeah, definite 2 cents from me. Admir, what did you think?
Yeah, 100%. 2 cents on that as well. I wanted to pick up a couple of things that you both said. So the first thing, I guess we might talk about performances now. It's a good place. Everyone in this cast shows up to like play. And I want to give a special shout out to James Hong, who I think is 96. He's in his 90s, and I think he's 96, and he plays a grandfather.
That is nuts.
This man now
96.
Yeah, I think he's 96. I have his Wikipedia here. Let me see. 93. Sorry, he's 93.
I mean, 90. That's
oh my
like,
god.
He's 93.
He's born in 1929. Guys, this is his not his first pandemic.
Man has seen it all. He's seen it all, man. His like wow. That whole thing that you talked about how Kay does the same thing where he's coming in and out of different versions of himself. He has to do the same thing as an actor. And when he did it, it was almost even more unexpected than when Kay did it. And when he did it, you're like, oh, holy shit, like, oh, damn, like he's also like some badass and shit. So he was able to do the transition really well. It was just fun to see such a side character have a prominent role. And I think that's what this movie did well. I think the characters that they did have, they like kept them in a small circle. And they all interacted with one another. Jamie Lee Curtis, I thought, was another one who like kept coming back.
Yes.
I am so happy she's in this movie because like she's been cornered into just the Halloween franchise, basically. I mean, I don't know if she's done too much other stuff, but I don't think it's hit the mainstream. I'm just so happy she was able to do this. Like, fantastic. Such a good performance. That dry IRS BS sort of like get up, the way they put her outfit on, like it just reeked of just mediocrity. And it just, she did.
Do you know how hard it is to be ridiculously annoying and hilarious at the same time?
Fantastic, man. Yeah. She becomes a wrestler and shit. She taps into, I think, when it's just body slamming people, like hilarious, man. The hilarity of it is in the performances. And again, to not leave Michelle Yeoh out, she is great in this as well. Very willing to go through the spectrum of being the serious person, and then as she slowly lets go of that seriousness, and it plays into the humor, plays into the chaos of the world that's presented into the film. I thought it was great, and I love that they basically give you the baseline of how random this shit is when they tell you that verse jumping is only possible by you doing something that is statistically very improbable to trigger some event, right? Which I've taken a couple of stats classes, all right? I enjoy myself statistical improbabilities every now and then, right?
And it makes sense. It actually makes sense at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's something logical about the idea of if we're going to break through universes, something obscene has to happen. And
that would have never happened.
Yeah, and that they would have never happened. And so I love that that's the base. And then from there, things get wilder and wilder. And I also do like the fact that they do lean into slapstick comedy. We really haven't seen slapstick comedy like be a primary sort of comedy vehicle in most movies. So it's funny to see that, back, like having the action sequences be funny and not just have it live in the jokes or live in the writing, which was there, but it was just sprinkled throughout in such a variety of ways. that I thought it was really good. And the other thing on the jokes, you mentioned that Osama, and it's bang on the money here. They stick to the jokes. Like, they stick to them, but they don't belabor the joke, which I think is two different things. I think we've seen a lot of recent comedies will do this thing where the joke will almost be killed before it even has time to breathe, because they'll just do it for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes straight. In this one, they'll do the same joke for that length of time, but it's broken apart. So they'll do the hot dog fingers for a minute. They'll leave it. Then they'll come back after an hour and do the minute again. They'll leave it. Then they'll come back again. So it's absurd. It's random, but they're able to keep it intact. Like, it could easily just become random shit every time they go to another universe. But they keep it grounded, which I think is important for us to keep, stay along with the story, but then also get the humor of each of these situations. Dude, raccoon on the chef's head. Like, the story develops. Ratatouille, like, the story develops in that world. Like, it develops from
so good, man.
This dude, like, feeling like, oh, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then, oh, he loses all of his, like, confidence because the raccoon gets taken away, and then he gets the raccoon. Like, it's so good, but that doesn't happen all at once. It's broken apart, and I think it's really clever that they broke it apart, because it does help the plot move forward. The humor doesn't hold it back, which is really, really critical for comedy.
You make a good point that, like, if you're jumping between universes, very often, and if you're doing that in a film, you could just, like, throw away all of them. Like, you just keep jumping universes and none of them matter. But in this one, they jump through enough that they're going to keep investing time in so that you see what continues to happen in each of those universes, and you actually invested in the jumps that they're making.
Absolutely. And even though we get this jumping, even though we're doing multiverses and we're going to different places and different areas, the film is basically all happening in the IRS building and in the laundromat / apartment building that the family's in, which is kind of contradictory considering the scope of the film, right? And I think that's something to be said about that. So, Osama, I'll go to you for this one. What did you make of that decision to keep things kind of bounded in what would probably be a limitless film, right?
Yeah, really great question. And elite transition, by the way. Don't think I haven't noticed these throughout the episode. The fact that this is set in realistically just 2 environments is beyond insane for the scope of this film and how wild it is, and the concept of verse jumping. The fact that we're still sitting in either the IRS building or the laundromat is crazy. Like, this movie that is genuinely crazy being set in 2 of the most boring locations has to be a creative decision, and done so well in this film, because you juxtapose these, like, really mundane environments with crazy action, crazy humor, etc. I think, like, if Deirdre, if Jamie Lee Curtis is anybody else other than an IRS agent in this scenario, it's just 5% less funny. Yeah. And I think the fact that she's able to live in this bounded world of being a really boring IRS agent allows her to flourish in the sense of, like, here, again, it's back to these rules. Like, you're a really boring agent. You sit here, you sit in a cubicle all day. Now go to town with it. Like, be hilarious, which she's able to do. Or Evelyn, who's living between these 2 worlds of her nightmare at the IRS building, someone who's auditing her, versus the nightmare and happiness that occur both at the laundromat, where she's dealing with family situations, etc. So you get this, like, this juxtaposition between her family and personal ties in this laundromat, which in and of itself is a symbol of potentially what she could have done, but she actually ended up doing, which is this kind of mundane activity, versus where she goes to the IRS building, somewhere that's meant to be the end of all her dreams, but ultimately becomes the portal to which she is able to access them all. So I think that was, like, a really cool a mechanism to get to the really creative things in this film. And it goes along with what you said earlier, Admir, which is this what worked so well is that they tried to bound the entire film. You have truly like 6 characters that they play with in the entire film, and those characters, or sorry, 6 actors who then like will play different roles in the film. But you get that familial nature in a movie that's bouncing around so much. It's so easy to feel lost as an audience member. It's so easy to feel like things are bouncing around too much and it's too hectic. But when you have grounding things like the same 6 actors or the same 2 settings, aside from the everything bagel scenes with Joy or Jobu Tupaki in the like heaven like sequences, outside of that, like you have these like grounding moments. So you're not aware of what to expect, but at the same time what ends up happening is somewhat expected because you're using the same few characters, using the same few settings. And I think with a movie this crazy, a lot of other films could take note, because I think it's a way to increase the scale of the film without increasing the size or geography of the actual plot itself. And I think that's such a really great way to give somebody a multi-dimensional, no pun intended, story in a very small encapsulated space. So for me, it's a 2 cents, very strategic and very well done, and huge props to the filmmakers on that. Fahad, what did you think?
Yeah, I think this podcast is a big suckfest of small settings, controlled settings. I think Chris would also agree. He's big on that too. I think that across the board, we're big on like kind of controlled variables in a movie. That way you kind of like you can really get the actors to like shine. I think that's why we love like Marini's Black Bottom. That was a very small scale movie in terms of the scope of it. One Night in Miami was just in a hotel room. So in like this one kind of takes that to the next level. It's in a small setting, but also in the largest setting of any like non-Marvel film. I'm not gonna include DC. DC hasn't gone into the Flashpoint shit yet. So like here, except for Marvel, no one else has done like this big scale of it, where just like an independent studio kind of tackling that, and the creative decision, as you kind of mentioned, of having it in a controlled very setting instead of really getting lost in the sauce of just an universe of literally infinite possibilities. You keep it very kind of it's a massive like juxtaposition to kind of like have the two contrast each other, and then you give the characters, like I kind of mentioned with the humor, these kind of like very colorful powers, and with the humor of like you kind of explaining, oh, you got to do random things to get superpowers. So although the setting itself is kind of like quote unquote boring, you have constantly like stimuli on the fucking screen of like there's this like, crazy shit happening at all times. Like she needs to say I love you on like the staircase to this woman to like get martial arts superpowers. So it's like the whole movies, it's almost like a kind of synergy of all the different elements working with each other. So that's why I like kind of mentioned that Marvel should definitely take a look at this, if not for Doctor Strange, like for future movies. With their budgets, this is not something that should be just kind of available or just independent. Like studios like A24 are brave enough to do this. This is like legit stuff. Like bigger studios could do this too and tell like amazing stories, you know, instead of just building a universe on like obscene amounts of special effects. And just like this movie has action, but it's not just about action. There's like other, like the setting itself contrasts really well with all the other things that are happening, and also like tackling like massive themes at the same time. I would definitely go with 2 cents for me on this one. And see, like I'm telling you, man, it's a suck fest for small settings, bro.
This is an easy one, easy W here. I'm reminded of the hero's journey graphic. I don't know if you boys have seen it. Of the I think it's 7 or 8 stages that most I would say mainstream hero movies will take with their protagonist. And there's one stage of that journey is the call to action or the call to adventure. And that's when our protagonist, in this case Evelyn, is asked to go into this new place, to go into this new challenge. And really, that's where it happens in the IRS building. I want to juxtapose that IRS building location with what they do in The Matrix, because I think it's quite similar but also really different. I think
there's a straight up like shout out with the bullet scene.
Yes.
Like they're basically that's why A24 is legit. Like any other studio would skirt around it. No, we're smart. We thought of this the first time. No one else thought of this.
It's the callback to the bullet scene, and I think there's also something about a red pill, blue pill. I think there's some reference to taking something. So it's a very clear callback. And I love the fact that they build on it, because in The Matrix, spoilers for a 1999 movie, Neo takes the call, but nothing happens in the building necessarily. I think he gets captured by Agent Smith, and he's back home. So nothing happens in the building where he works. It just sort of goes on from there. In this one, the call to action happens in the building, but then all the fun also unfolds there. So I think they start from a really similar place where you have this very dry, basic, geometrically very boring place filled with equally boring folks, I imagine. But then this film builds on it, because it takes... And I think there's something to be said about this. It takes something very normal and ordinary and makes it extraordinary, right? So the action sequences, for example, you have Waymond when he's like kicking dudes' asses with like his fanny pack, right? Mm-hmm. Because what else is he going to use in an IRS building as a weapon? Like, what is there to use? That's pretty much all he has on him, so that's what he'll use. So I think locations like that allow people to be very fun with how things unfold.
Yeah.
And it was great that they didn't leave the building quickly. Like I had this worry as I'm watching it. I'm like, where are they gonna? They're just gonna leave and then what? We'll go from there, go to a new place. But they didn't. They basically stay in there for the majority of the film. And there's like this feeling of there's levels to it. So they're going to different levels, and there's like these different challenges to each of them. So it allowed them to make something quite boring and ordinary very entertaining and fun. And I think that challenge brings out the best in creators. It allows them to say, okay, well, how can we make these things a little bit more interesting? You have the fight sequence in the staircase. You have the fight sequence when the lights are out. Like, you have all these different things unfolding. And again, what I think most of us would say is pretty boring place. And I think the other importance for that is it's a place that we're familiar with. So even though, I mean, I haven't been into an IRS building, knock on wood, hopefully never have to. But I imagine we all have a sense of what a 1980s corporate America building looks like. We've all probably been in one or two. And so it's easier for us to ground ourselves in that location. Similarly with the laundromat, it's easier for, I think, the audience to take part in it. But I also think it's a great location that's very, very confined and almost claustrophobic, especially the apartment, right? It allows us to see the family dynamic way better than anywhere else. Like in the IRS building, Waymond and Evelyn are like a kind of a team. Like, even though there's friction, they're not against each other. But in the apartment, you see the friction a lot more. You see Evelyn, talk to him a little bit more harshly. You see literally life, slowly closing in on her. Like, the walls are coming in. She has no room around her to maneuver. So it's great that happens. And then even in the laundromat, you have little things show up, like you have weird customers. You have the way Waymond deals with some of the clothes, the way that Evelyn doesn't want to deal with them. So again, places that we're used to. And I love the fact that the film ends in the laundromat. Like, it ends with, she breaks the glass and she wants to basically tear that place up, even though it's not hers anymore. But it ends in that location. It ends where the family is. It ends where we started, right? And that's really the hero's journey. So it's a very basic journey in terms of hitting the checkpoints, but I think it does so in a very, very creative way with ordinary things. And I think this movie really wants to harp on there's extraordinary in the ordinary. There's the infinity, there's the limitless in the limited and the possible. Like, it's there for you, and these locations, I think, inhabit that idea quite well.
This dude's spitting bars right now.
Yeah, for real. Transitions and bars, man.
Yo, you've lost it. Nah, you're nice, dog.
We've been praising this movie to the high heavens. To the high heavens! Up there with the bagel. And unfortunately, we don't think, and I'll speak for the three of us, that love has been translated in what we think should be the box office numbers. So this movie got a wide release this past weekend. I didn't have a hard time finding a ticket, but I did have to go out of my way to find a ticket. And that's kind of weird saying it, being in New York City of all places. I know AMC had it. I know a couple of Regals had it. I don't know if the smaller movie theaters had the film. It may have something to do with it. But Fahad, I want to go to you for this one. Like, what do you think the situation is with the box office on this? The eyes this film is getting? Is it not enough attention? Is it too much attention? Are we judging it too early? Like, is it still early in the runway of this film for it to pick up some steam and maybe do some numbers down the line? What do you think, brother?
So a couple things. Off the bat, I think generally we're big A24 fans on this podcast. I know that Sam hates them with all his guts, but I know that
it's crazy.
Generally, we are big fans on this.
I do not hate them.
If they want to be
before
here,
we lose
Sam,
another podcast.
If they want to
guest.
be here, Sam will swallow his pride, and he's willing to have you guys.
I love A24 for what they do.
Chris, clip season. No, you're good. Nothing else needs to be said. Don't hit me with that.
I disagree with the 100% suckfest, no matter what they do, because what if you gotta respect that they make bold decisions. Mm-hmm. But with bold decisions comes some ball drops, and that's all I'm saying.
And like, sadly, creatively, we have like kind of really praised this. I don't think we have praised any other movie we have reviewed so far on here, on all three of us, without any sort of kind of fatal, even smaller flaws in the movie. I can't really think of many movies like this right now. Mm-hmm. Like, even Macbeth, how much me and Admir loved it, it's almost in like another language. So like, that was like a massive barrier to kind of understanding it, you know? Where like, I was trying to think about it earlier today. I was like, what other movie are we going to talk about that we like this much? But creatively, amazing job. But marketing wise, like Sam mentioned it, he didn't see much marketing for it. Like, we had the Super Bowl go by recently, right? They might have had a Super Bowl spot, but I don't rarely remember it being memorable. That like, NBA push towards the playoffs is happening. I saw nothing there. Like, there was no like actual push from it, and it's not like it's a small budget movie. 25 million is still a bit for A24. They don't usually splurge on their movies like this, so still like you'd expect them to have some sort of push. I do think that, even Sam kind of mentioned Parasite earlier, I don't think Parasite did that well the first week it was out either. It was a slow burn. It made an obscene amount down the road, which I think this movie will eventually get up to. But is it a masterstroke by A24? Because 24, like, if they make $100, $200, $300 million, that's still $300 million. I get screwed because of our scoring system, but they're not concerned about that necessarily. But I will say, like, I do feel like it's kind of they kind of bungled the release, where you didn't either kind of advertise it enough. And I fully agree with Admir what he said too. When I was looking for tickets, only certain AMCs had tickets. Yeah. Not all AMCs had tickets, so I don't know. And while you guys were having the previous conversation, I was trying to like find something somewhere. Apparently, A24 got a better squad than the CIA, scrubbing the webs, because there's nothing out there on why it released like this. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. Ambulance shouldn't be beating you to the box office the same week you go wide release, right? That just doesn't make sense to me, because the theater I was in was full. And the tickets I was looking at other theaters were all selling out. And when me and our friends were leaving, we were leaving around like 10. There were people going in for the 10 p.m. showing on a Monday night. So people are, I just think like whatever way they kind of decided to market it didn't work out. But at the end of the day, now I think they're going to kind of really push for it. They don't really have anything else fighting them hardcore in terms of big movies. Like, Northman is coming out. We were talking about that before the cast, but it's not like a kind of juggernaut that'll eat into this movie's budget, like box office tickets. So I do think down the road this movie will be a slow burn and make a lot of money. But in this situation, I think like so horribly done. Like, there's nothing else big coming out. What was the last movie we did? It was, bro, Morbius, dog. Like, yo, come on, bro. Like, you could have outcompeted with Sony in the ad campaigns, bro. Like, I really saw. I was about to say deadass. I really saw more Morbius ads in the subway, on the TV, on social media than I did.
Well,
that
was
was- yeah.
right. Like,
Yeah,
is that really a surprise?
But it's like, I don't think Sony is outspending you that much in marketing. Like, if you can afford to make a $25 million movie, you can afford to drop a few more mil on ad spots, you know? But I guess that they're taking an approach of, we'll let the art do the talking. Money is good, even if it comes a few weeks later, instead of you getting that initial boost. Like, Marvel will come bursting out the gates that first weekend. Maybe A24 is taking an approach of, it's so good, people will talk, and then that will basically get us the tickets, the numbers that we want to see eventually. Because it's not like dudes hate money, regardless of how creative they are. No one hates money. They don't want to make less money. I can't believe that. I wouldn't think that's real. I think they're probably taking a perspective of, it's so good, and we know the product we have on hand. And also, like, the Asian community will come out to show support eventually. So, and that's what I see that happening very soon too, because I had friends like I had a friend whose sister like bought out a whole theater to invite everyone they knew to go watch Shang-Chi. So like something like that, like once the word of this movie spreads, a lot of people will come out to show support. So I do think it'll make a lot of money, especially worldwide, because also it doesn't kind of tackle some crazy theme where the CCP would block it from airing in China. It does have some like kind of progressive ideas in terms of sexuality, but it's not like coming at governmental rule or authorities or some shit. So I see it being released in China. I don't see it being an issue there. So in the future, I see it making a shit ton. But for now, they dropped the ball in my opinion. But I'll probably have to eat humble pie when they eventually make a lot of money. That's a 1 cent for me for now. Until I see bigger numbers, it'll stay at 1 cent. So, because the movie is definitely not getting the love that it deserves. The way we talked about it, it's definitely not, for sure. Sam, what did you think?
Yeah, I hear you. I think there's two things in what you're saying. One is that, you know, the marketing wasn't there for this movie. That was clear. Like, I think I barely saw anything about
Even
this
posters,
film at
I
all.
feel like you could make so many cool posters with the themes of this movie.
And that's the thing. The posters for this film are really dope.
Yep.
Like, they're actually really good. Like,
Honest
everything around this
posted
film
it on his story,
is
so
great.
check his Instagram out. He actually posted it on his story
Yeah.
today.
It's really good. Everything around this film is really good. Again, that's one side, which is the lack of marketing. And I think A24, I truly think we can't expect them to market at the level of a Sony or a Marvel or any other like big studio house. However, there's the other side, which is the limited release. So this movie actually originally came out on March 11th, I think, with a limited release nationally, and then it actually had its wide release on April 8th. I saw it in the first couple days of April. So, and I talked about this on our Twitter page as well, so definitely check us out there too. But when I saw the film, it was in Lincoln Square in Manhattan, and it was in it's a popular theater, but a smaller, cramped theater. And I was in there, and truly every seat was packed. Right, like it at first felt really uncomfortable because of this post-pandemic world that we're living in, and the fact that I hadn't been in a theater in a long time, including like really big movies where the entire theater was packed, and we were in a smaller theater, one of those spread apart seats where I'm literally the person is breathing over my shoulder everywhere to my left, right, and behind me, and I still had an amazing time. And I think it was a good reminder that of what things were like and how you can come together over a really wonderful story and experience, and something that everybody could like really laugh, cheer, cry about all together. But I think from a distribution perspective, I don't understand why from the wide release perspective it was still difficult to get to. Like, for me, that was the only theater that was playing it, albeit during the limited release. But once it got a wider release, I don't know why it didn't get much wider, like a Morbius, like anything else. And to be honest, if this came out on March 11th, you're competing with things like The Lost City and stuff like that. And, and that's one where I saw ads for everywhere. And I understand.
And it's not like The Lost City is sponsored by might have been Universal, but it's not like they're sponsored by some crazy org like Disney, you know?
Right. And the thing is, it's like, once these theaters realize that there's high demand for this film, which there definitely is, and you can see it from the reception online, I don't understand the logic for the limited distribution. I don't know if it's something to do with the rights. I don't know if it's something to do with A24 just not working hard enough to get it in those distribution channels. I don't know what it is, and that's the part to me that I think is inexcusable. I think the lack of marketing dollars is fine. It's something that we see a lot of times in movies. We didn't see much about Parasite, although that was an international film. This one isn't, but we didn't see too much about a lot of films that ended up being really, really good, especially the ones we even talked about on this podcast, including some A24 ones. So for this, I don't ding it on the dollars spent. I ding it on the inability to get in the door for a lot of these theaters nationwide. Because like you said, we're not at the age where we're at the time this year where we're competing with like the Doctor Stranges, with the Spider-Mans, like with the Thors. Like this is a time period where we're struggling to find films to review on this podcast that are worth our time. So a movie like this, there's no reason why it shouldn't be in every theater playing at every showtime. Because like you said, there's people, the theaters are packed and people are waiting in line to get in and waiting for the next showing and the next showing, like all throughout the night in these limited theaters. And I don't know, maybe somebody can prove me wrong and tell me that this is a tactic by the distribution channels to actually create buzz around the film because of the fact that people can't get in to watch it. But I highly doubt it, because I think this is one of those where it's so good you don't need to overthink it. Like just make it available to everyone so that people can love the movie accordingly. So I agree with you. It's a 1 cent, but more so for the lack of distribution.
And also, like, real quick, I saw ads of that goat movie, bro. So like that's also my issue. It's not just the dollars. It's like you said,
they are pushing
the
others.
Part, it's the drive. It's like you didn't. I don't know if that was like an organizational. Maybe they're doing some big brain math, and it's actually going to work out for them. Like I said, but with the information that we have at hand now, you're not showing me the drive that you've shown for. I saw Midsummer trailers. I saw Midsummer trailer. I'm like, oh, that movie looks kind of very colorful and weird. Right. Like, how am I seeing a trailer for the goat movie? That is I think so. I think so. Midsummer. Yeah. No, like
I think it was.
Yeah, that's
and for this film, the other thing I know is like they tried to keep the plot details under wraps, like to the point where I think a while ago the official synopsis of the film was something like a woman tries to do her taxes. Like that was literally the bio of the film, and it was because they were trying to keep every detail about the film as secret as possible, which could lead to why the marketing dollars were so few. But once it's out, man. Like it's been out for over a month now. So
and the other
equation, get it through every door.
Yeah, and the other side of the equation is you're not like making the deals with the theaters for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe there's a bigger reason, but wide release not being a true wide release is just like fake news, and that's something you can, I guess, ding them on. Yeah, like I wouldn't hold them to the standard of you're not buying Super Bowl spots, but you're also pushing your other movies. Like I'm seeing some like obscene movie trailer that I shouldn't be seeing, and I've seen that on YouTube while I'm just scrolling. So I'm not even saying push it on some crazy medium, you know. But yeah, Admir, yeah, my bad.
Yeah, it's a bit of a question mark because I'm not sure I understand the mechanics of how the movie release process works. So it's difficult to say it. I'll tell you my like experience with like The Lighthouse back in 2019. It had a lower budget. I think it was 11 million. It ended up grossing very similarly to this film in its opening weekend, with like a couple million when it opened up wide release, right? I don't think like A24, I'm happy to hear your thoughts as well, but I don't think like the A24, like as a company, cares to the degree that I think other film production companies do when it comes to how much money they're raking in, right? I think there's a lot more significance put on, like, does the film perhaps fit the brand of A24? Now, you need to be successful to some degree. I don't think you can, just put out garbage there. But I do think there's also a sense of perhaps leaning on the art being itself more so than the box office. Now, I think the reason why we're upset, or this is not upset, but like why I think we're a little bit frustrated with this is because this is one of those movies where if you gave it the same level playing field as, like, let's say a Morbius, it'll probably outgross it in the box office.
Yeah.
Which is which is crazy because it's an IP, right? It's coming in fresh versus something like as you know, from left field as Morbius is, it's still very much a Spider-Man universe movie, right? So it has the cachet. That's why I think we're frustrated, because I think so many of us want these movies to do well in the box office, want people to watch them, so that we can then generate enough desire and enough consumer demand so that more of these movies get made,
exactly.
and more of these movies become easier to get a hold of or watch. I think additionally with these films, I don't know what the streaming situation is with A24 movies. Like, I don't think this should have gone directly to streaming, but I also don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world if it was available for streaming, man. Like, I think you could have done a both release, or you could have done a very limited wide release, then gone directly to streaming, and then just have people watch the movie, man. Like, I think that's what I think I'm most frustrated with. It's like, I don't think enough people are going to watch this, and if it comes down to logistical reasons, that's just very frustrating.
That's
and very
so
annoying.
sad. That's
Like,
so sad too.
Parasite had 2 releases. Like, it had the initial release, and I remember watching it twice. I remember watching it in October, and then I remember going back to watch it with Kasha in like February during the Oscar season.
And then it came out on streaming relatively fast,
and then
too.
it was
They didn't wait dumb
right?
long. They didn't wait super long
I mean,
for
I don't know
streaming.
what the streaming numbers were, but like, it's a film that was made very readily available. And I think this is the one, I guess, like, annoying thing with A24 movies is they're very not easy to watch. Not necessarily content-wise, although, yes, sometimes content-wise. But, like, getting to watch one of these movies is a little bit of a trek compared to other films. So, for like, you know, movies that don't get the eyes on them, you almost want to help them along the way. You could make the counter argument of, well, Admir, if it's streaming, it's just going to get lost in the sauce of every other movie that's streaming. Potentially, that's a fair point, which is why I think some combination of a wide release and then a not an immediate, but maybe a quick streaming release. Like, if this comes to streaming within a month while there's still sort of fervor around it, I think that would be great. But more likely than not, it might top out at 20 million. I don't think A24 really gives a shit. I just think it's like, damn, not a lot of people are going to watch this, and hopefully word of mouth carries it. But I don't know. A bit pessimistic.
Yeah, I'm seeing a few theories online. One is that, like what I mentioned, which is that having a limited release in like key markets like New York and LA generates the hype and buzz, so that it does do better in the smaller theaters as it gets a wider release nationally. Another is that, you know, these bookings at these theaters get negotiated so far in advance that an AMC or a Regal or whatever is not gonna, you know, sell these I guess slots to an A24 as much as they will to a Marvel or a Sony or whoever else that they know is going to be like a ticket through the door, like a guaranteed ticket through the door. So there's like multiple reasons, but a third is that, you know, that A24 genuinely just did not know the type of film that they had in their hands. So like something like this, you don't really get the user response before you have to commit to whatever you're going to spend or invest in the film. So they had to probably make these decisions months ago in like summer, fall of 2021 in order to see how much they wanted to invest in, you know, releasing everything everywhere all at once. And there's a high chance that maybe they just didn't know how quality of a film it is in order to get it out there.
That could be the case, 100%. I just find it really weird because I think this is the highest, this is the most expensive, I think, A24 movie. So for this to be like your most expensive one and to not put like, not all your eggs in one basket, but to like really put it out there if you really believed in the story enough to make it your most expensive film. I don't know, man. It's like if, you know, we're going to have, like we had Avengers Endgame, which was like the most expensive Marvel movie ever. But like Spider-Man, the one after, was the one that got the more advertising or the bigger push, which is, it would be odd because you'd expect it. Well, you're given the money, so you must have an expectation this is going to deliver.
Well, I actually have the thoughts of an esteemed member of the podcast. Some would say the most important member of the podcast. Chris also watched this movie, I think especially after you recommended it to him and said like how good it was. I think he went with a couple of friends to watch it. So he sent me his thoughts, which these are Chris's words. None of these are mine, but I agree with all of them. So you know how it is. This isn't recency bias in the slightest. This is the best film I've seen since Parasite and my favorite movie of the decade so far. This movie was hilarious and also made me tear up towards the end. A masterclass in acting and action sequences, easily one of the best scripts of all time. This film is the Azur Ahai of cinema. It's a Game of Thrones reference for those of you who don't get it, as it will influence studios to pursue and back up more original ideas and not just MCU nonsense. Sam needs to stop lying to himself and admit that A24 is the best production company in the world and it's not close. Holy shit, what a movie. 9.5 out of 10. So me, Sam, and Edmure talked a lot throughout kind of the two cent segments. So I won't take up a lot of time to kind of get through this. I'm gonna match Chris on this one. It's a 9.5 for me. I don't even know what I'm taking the 0.5 off for. I just think I just can't give it a 10. Like nothing. I don't know. Like a 10 is maybe if I'm 90, I'll give it a 10. This movie is almost perfect in every way I can think of in terms of trying to. That's what we're trying to do it before we're kind of going through the 2 cent segments. Like what are we gonna like disagree on? And there was like the release thing is not up to the movie. That's not movie content. I can't dock points off of that. So 9.5 for me. Probably a 10 with time. Once it comes out of the streaming, I'll watch it with the fam. I'll watch it with the boys. I feel like once I get to experience the laughs with like my loved ones, it'll be way more hilarious. 9.5 for me too.